It was a beautiful summer day and a day of happiness for the students because it was the end of the first semester. The girls walked home from the university joyfully and were already planning how they would have fun using shellfish. But their fathers did not think so because they wanted to send them to London instead of them playing fishing, where they would be the river. But this did not stop the girls because even there they could cast a fishing rod to play with the clam and relax. Our main character looked at them and did not understand at all because despite the fact that they studied at a prestigious university, it does not mean that their life will change much. While some students were trying to cast bait and catch a guy to feed him a snail, others were working hard to pay for the next semester. Our main character was from a poor family and realized that he did not have enough to study, so he began to think about taking a break from studying. Suddenly, some beauty approached our Kim Seaman, who had been looking for him for a very long time at the university. By the way, that was the name of our main character. This beauty's name was Han Seo-won. She was Kim Seaman's classmate and also his first love. He confessed his love to her, but was refused. But that very day became special for him, because after that their relationship changed very much, and now she only fed him a snail and let him into the cavity. And the moment when she found him was happy for her, because now she took him and they went to realize the essence of their relationship. It was a place where a poor student like him wouldn't even need a couple of pennies. Usually after rejection of love proposals, awkwardness and discomfort arise between people, but not in their case, as we see. Even after this refusal, they can enjoy each other's company because they play and eat together. But for her, he will have a special protein drink. She couldn't live without these games with him and cried with happiness while he destroyed this depression that he fell into in the game. This gave them both pleasure, and Kim Seomyeon enjoyed this opportunity, although he did not receive moral pleasure from games without love. Kim Seomyeon did a great job with one thing he didn't even know about. She offered him a job as a tutor this summer. He agreed to such an attractive job because he needed money to pay for the next semester at the university. There, Kim Seaman had to go to some village to work there. He looked for the right house for a long time, but suddenly an attractive woman came to take him there. As soon as he noticed the house, he was immediately very surprised because he could not believe that such a huge house would be in such a village. This woman was just a beauty, and he couldn't believe that she would be the mother of the girl he would teach. As soon as he entered their house, he met this girl's younger sister, who was even more attractive and younger. He recognized her immediately, but as it actually happened, it was just a helper in their house who was very attractive. He managed to compliment her and she fell in love with him. It was an awkward situation, but she was as cute as a bunny. We hope that she will play like a bunny jumping several times. Kim Seomyeon went up the stairs to meet Chan-mi, whom he will need to train this summer and take advantage of opportunities. But when she invited him to go there, he suddenly noticed that the balls did not have a cover. He couldn't believe that she really wasn't wearing it. They began to rise up, and he was still in his thoughts, because he believed that the mother of a girl his age could not be so young. They went upstairs and his mother accompanied him, but suddenly it seemed to him that the clam was also not covered, although this was true. This surprised him very much and made him want to start playing with her, because she was completely ready for this. But Kim Seaman really didn't believe until the very end that this was really so, and he blamed everything on the fact that he was mistaken, because he couldn't be embarrassed on the very first day. They got to her room, and then he noticed that she suddenly began to be very nervous about coming to her daughter. Entering the room, it was as if he had fallen in love again at first sight, because the girl there was very attractive. It was his future student. She sat on the chair like a king and did not pay attention to her mother. She was more interested in this guy, although she did not show it. His mother walked him to the room and said goodbye to them, but then he realized that she had probably noticed that he had been staring at the huge balls for a very long time. But he couldn't get the thought out of his head that they were truly a superb mother-daughter pair. They were very beautiful. Suddenly, his student decided to embarrass him because she noticed that Kim Seaman wanted to play with these balls, as well as with his mother. But she was not going to give him up, but only hinted that he could really throw his fishing rod there and catch something. He actually didn't quite believe it, because he had an extremely strange feeling of déjà vu, as if it was all a dream. But she was really going to help him with this so that he would teach her well and could relax in their house because he is a guest. Kim Seomyeon didn't believe a single word she said, so he thought about whether he would have problems here because the student began to deceive him on the very first day. Then he decided to say that he was not going to give up the fishing rod and play with his mother because he didn't want that. This question was crazy. This girl was not so simple, so she immediately began to blame everything on the fact that he answered her question with a question. It was wrong. But suddenly, no matter how strange it was, this girl began to act like she was crazy and started laughing. Thus, she wanted to find out more about her teacher, because usually all the guys fell for her mother, because she was sweet and very naive. was exactly the one to whom any guy would bend. Kim Semyoung agreed with this because she was really beautiful, but then she decided to continue her jokes and gave him advice on how he could play with her mother. But this only made him very angry, because he could not believe that someone could think so badly about his mother. She didn't believe that he really thought so, and deep down in her heart she wanted to ask him for some strange promise. But he didn't understand why he needed to do it, because it was pointless because he wasn't going to do something strange anyway. He didn't understand what happened to her in such a short time, because now she didn't want to study with him, but he needed it. So despite this strange request, he decided to make her a promise. Then her eyes lit up again, like the starry sky. He felt uncomfortable with this conversation, so he asked to stop it, but she suddenly rewarded him with balloons. For a second, he fell into this trap and already began to dream about these balls, but he managed to quickly wake up and stopped wallowing in them. At this point, he completely ran out of strength and couldn't stand it anymore because he wanted to play, so he decided to leave her. He went downstairs to inspect the house, but then her mother showed him the room in which he would stay. He was surprised. He couldn't believe that they had given him a room, so he was very surprised because he had booked a house nearby. But her mother knew it would be inconvenient because the closest village was an hour's drive away, so she canceled their reservation. He never ceased to be surprised by what was happening in this house, especially after his daughter's offer to play with her mother. Despite all this, he had excellent conditions, because now he could let Bobby out for a walk and save money because of his room. He remembered the words of his gaming partner, who set a cosmic salary for this work. But then even she did not know that he would live in their house. Kim Semyeon recalled the words of his girlfriend, that her friend was a very cheerful, innocent, and very nice girl. But he was not very happy about it. She had a sweet face, but he had a very bad feeling about it. He suddenly wanted to go to the bathroom, but this house was so big that he could easily get lost in there. After a couple of minutes of searching, he was still able to find the bathroom and went in, but the bathroom was occupied by an assistant. He was very embarrassed at that moment, but the assistant was ready to give him the bathroom because she was just cleaning it. But Kim Semyeon became embarrassed, and after that he returned to his room and continued to lie in his room, thinking about something. Kim Semyeon believed that the girls in this house lived completely thoughtlessly, and the only thing they did was use games. He was calmly resting in his room, but suddenly the assistant of this house began knocking on the room. She needed help. This fragile girl did not have enough strength to tighten the nut in the bathroom, so she called a strong man for help. He quickly dealt with this request, and she was grateful to him for this, because otherwise they would have fined her for a broken shower. The slaughterhouse assistant was absolutely delighted, because she felt like she was watching a superhero movie when she watched him fix the tap. She seemed to him to be a rather kind and sweet person, after which she suddenly noticed that he was all wet and began to worry about him. He could easily catch a cold, so she quickly threw a towel over his head and began to wipe it so that he would dry faster. She continued to do this, but it embarrassed him greatly, so suddenly the bobby came out into the open and he could not hide it. The bob made him blush, but for her it was a normal thing, so she wanted to help him with it so that he would relax faster. He didn't even plan that he would find himself in such a situation, because the only thing he did was respond to her request. He couldn't believe that he would cast a fishing rod into a river that only knew one day, but he needed to relax and he could no longer hold back. Then she let it into a small lake so that the fishing rod could feel pleasant. But as soon as the bobby flew into the water, he felt heavenly pleasure, even though nothing special happened. At that moment, she really tried to help him in every way, so she was warming up with Bobby before the game. The warm-up suddenly ended and she was about to leave him alone by the river, but he stopped her and asked her to continue playing with Bobby. She didn't refuse him, because that's really all she wanted after so many years of working hard alone. Then he decided to thank her, but she did not want to stand on ceremony and immediately began the game that she had been waiting for so long. They instantly understood each other and had no intention of holding back, even though Kim Semyeon was very surprised. The only thing he thought about was how much he liked it, because the bait he took was very tasty. She was very embarrassed at that moment when he was warming up with her, and Bobby was already ready to rush towards the goal. Despite the fact that he only communicated with Chanmi in the morning, he could no longer stop because he was ready to play, so he began to relax. Bobby ran forward. He rushed and immediately burst into the main gate. It was very humid and warm there. He couldn't even believe what was happening to him now, but there was nothing he could do about it. It was absolutely fantastic. Boyan simply admired him and loved this game. She couldn't even believe that she could start playing it again. This game escalated into the fact that the bobby became a sword and was constantly driven into the goal, but suddenly the bobby was deflated because the ball ran out of water. He was very tired after this game, but she was inspired, so she suddenly began asking him about where he learned to play like that. For the first time, she felt so wonderful, and it even embarrassed Kim Seeds because he did not expect such a reaction from her. She enjoyed it with all her might, so now she was going to leave so that after such a game he could rest peacefully. Walking out the door, she stopped in shock because she suddenly had strange, loving feelings in her chest. This will be the decisive moment. She liked it very much, but now she doubted that she could look at anything other than Bobby. After this crazy game, he wanted to relax and take a sip of fresh, cool water, so he began to go downstairs. Going downstairs, he didn't expect that he would meet Chanmi's mother there, who at that moment was calmly lying on the sofa and sleeping in a sweet sleep. This woman was simply excellent. Bobby could only try to run out of his cage in order to fly into these gates. Kim Semyon stopped at that moment and could not even move because of this beautiful sight. Then he could quite calmly take advantage of this moment and play a wonderful game, but his conscience tormented him until one moment. He was very close to breaking loose and releasing the beast Bobik so that he would tear apart this open cage. But he was a man and kept his word, keeping all his desires and Bobby on a chain so that nothing would happen. Then he went to the refrigerator, which was nearby, in order to find some kind of cooling drink. But as he expected, there was nothing there that he wanted to drink, which upset him a little. But suddenly behind Kim Semyon was her mother, who had now woken up due to the light of the refrigerator. She very quickly realized that he was looking for a special drink, so she immediately got something even much better than him. But then he began to get very embarrassed, because he knew that this drink could be compared in price to a whole car, and did not want them to spend it on him. But his mother winked at him because of the pain and said that they had plenty of this drink in the house. He was surprised, but paid attention to her pain. She had a pain in her neck due to sleeping on the couch the wrong way, so he decided to help her get rid of this pain. But literally a second before he did it, he remembered the words of Chanmi, who told him about her mother's weakness. He started to do this, and suddenly the mother decided to tell the teacher something about Jangmi. She turned around and noticed that she was standing behind them. This scared her a lot, and she didn't say anything, but Chanmi just came to get her juice from the refrigerator and was glad that it started to work. At that moment, goosebumps seemed to run through Kim's body. He couldn't believe that this was not a dream. After a while, they decided to start their first lesson. Kim Si-myung noticed that she was quite cute when she was silent. But in the middle of their lesson, an assistant came in to bring them a snack for the duration of the lesson. The assistant looked shy, and Chanmi noticed this, so she decided to ask what happened between them. He was about to tell her to continue doing the assignments, but she finished, so he started checking. Kim Semyon was very surprised, because he didn't know that she was so smart, because almost all the answers were correct. He thought that she had cheated and copied the answers, but then she asked him that he was really more irresponsible than he seemed. He set himself up and immediately began to make excuses for her, because in fact it was not so. Chanmi just made fun of him and started laughing. She had just a beautiful smile and he noticed it. She was incredibly smart and beautiful, but despite all this, she had a slight lack of knowledge in some areas. Chanmi was enjoying her free time and just wanted to go somewhere, without even choosing the profession of your future. But at that moment, she again decided to mock this poor guy, and started saying that she just wanted to have fun at the university. She constantly told him something incredibly stupid, despite her high intelligence. Suddenly, Chanmi decided to talk about an ancient legend from China. In ancient times, young girls were fed mainly with peaches, and all this was done so that the shellfish would exude the smell of a sweet young peach after this meal. But Chanmi again wasn't going to stop at just one story, so she decided to tease the teacher and ask her to check the clam for this smell. She was aiming to tease him for a long time, but suddenly he sneezed very funny right in front of her. But at that moment, she could not contain her emotions, because it was very funny and it made her cry. Despite the fact that it was very hot outside, he still managed to get sick because yesterday he started playing with his assistant completely wet. Chanmi at that moment was surprised that he could get sick, so she decided to ask him if he slept just like her mother. Then Kim Semyon didn't even think for a second and immediately began to imagine it. His mouth is already watering. Chanmi was then happy because she realized that her teacher began to imagine this scene in his head. This embarrassed him very much, and then he began to make excuses because he was not like that and did not want her to drag him into this. But then she handed him a rag so that he could wipe himself after he sneezed, because there was dirt on his face. But as soon as he began to wipe his face, she suddenly asked him about the smell of peach, saying that she had dipped this rag in a clam. He was not going to fall into her trap, because his goal was to educate her, not to have fun this summer. But she again began to behave very strangely, and began to ask him not to leave her alone in this house. In fact, Chanmi heard that everyone who goes to college has tried these unusual games, so she started asking him about it. The teacher was very embarrassed at this point because she really wanted to get him hooked on this. Chanmi really wanted to try every game she had in her head. Despite her embarrassment, she really pushed hard for this. The teacher could no longer stop, because she looked at him with puppy eyes and asked him to play with her. She was still able to lure him into this trap in order to make all her dreams come true. She was about to start warming up, and she was able to do it. They started using secret lip techniques. She looked much more beautiful up close. Suddenly, the teacher could not restrain himself and began to reciprocate her feelings. Then she realized that he also wanted this. But at that moment, he also had slightly different thoughts, because he still understood that if he did this, there would be no turning back. They were the same age, so she decided to ask him for a favor for the first and last time so that she could relax in peace. Chanmi was going to keep it all a secret and didn't want him to stop. These words really pushed him to do this. She blushed completely from embarrassment because he began to act very abruptly. The clam suddenly appeared right in front of his eyes, and the balloons had long since inflated. Chanmi was very embarrassed by his actions, but he was just preparing the shellfish for powerful frying with his hands. He noticed her expression at the moment when he was preparing the clam and realized that she also had such a side. But at that moment, he stopped and it upset her very much, so she started screaming because she felt very good at that moment. Then Chanmi was very nice to him and only wanted to continue preparing for the game so that it would happen as soon as possible. At that moment, it made him change his mind and quickly move on to the main course. He was preparing to score a goal in his cooking. She was very worried at that moment because she had never done something like this before. It was very sweet for him. She was worried and asked him to be careful, but despite the fact that it was a little painful, it was very pleasant. After that, they continued playing. The balls flew in like family, but it's good that she wasn't the one that flew in. He couldn't believe what was happening. She really was mysterious. He couldn't even think that he would play with her someday. They both completely enjoyed this moment and could not stop, but still had to, because the sensations were unreal. The thought that he was the first to teach her something like this drove him crazy, and he couldn't restrain himself. So he scored the decisive goal, but missed. He enjoyed this moment, but then she suddenly told him that it was quite boring. It was quite interesting in those moments when he showed interest, but she did not believe that it could drive people crazy. But suddenly she started talking about the fact that perhaps she didn't like it, because her first game was with a small tutor. These words hurt him very much, but he was not going to stay with this feeling and decided that he would prove it back to her. So he decided to use the snail again. He will make her feel real heavenly pleasure so that the snail will unfold completely. He began to prove this to her very rudely and it hurt her pride, but despite this, after that it became much more pleasant. Then she realized that he was only holding back because it was her educational game, but he couldn't forgive her. At that moment, she felt completely different. Then she realized that this was exactly what people wanted. Chanmi was a very arrogant girl, but Kim Se-myung at that moment wanted to put her in her place so that this would not happen again. He used all his skills and abilities to punish this arrogant girl. He was great at it. She tried to stop him because she couldn't believe in such happiness, but he was still far from the end. He's going to have a great time today. Suddenly, he noticed that she began to behave strangely and stopped abruptly. She was at a loss. She didn't want him to stop at all, because various pleasant sensations that she had been waiting for were flowing through her. Then she admitted that she was wrong and took her words back. These feelings were wonderful. Her heart was beating like crazy. She was indeed mysterious, even if you knew her well, but that did not stop him from taking advantage of all the opportunities he wanted. She was just a child who was enjoying this unusual game, but he felt that it was time for him to end it all. It was completely different from the first time. This time she caught everything on the fly. She was a very smart child. Being able to use this gate was great as it was very warm and nice. Bobak ran in and out over and over again. Kim Se-myung finished his second round with her, but she didn't want to stop because of the new pleasant sensation she got. So this time she wanted to play horse, so she had to imagine this horse and enjoy the ride. It was such a strange, but at the same time pleasant feeling that she really began to lose her mind. She could no longer restrain herself, but he continued and continued, so he only drove her crazy with such a daring game. And thus, only after a short period of time, she lost to him right on the horse. After that, he had to wake up Chanmi because she was so tired of this game that she actually fell off an imaginary horse. After a while, she woke up, but her tears began to flow. It was due to the overabundance of emotions that she experienced in a short time. Kim Se-myung then decided to proudly ask her what it was like for her to play with him on this horse. But then she returned to her usual role and began to be insolent to him again. She never learned anything at all. Chanmi started making fun of him because she thought he liked imagining the peach. But he didn't like it, and it embarrassed him. The teacher was very upset because he did not behave like a teacher today, so he apologized to her and left her alone in the room. She was very surprised by this and was upset because the only thing she wanted was for him to play with her. Because of what happened, he wasn't even sure that he would be able to conduct their next lesson normally, and it scared him because he wouldn't even be able to look her in the eyes after that. He was walking through their yard and suddenly noticed her mother, who was resting in the open air like a goddess who was just enjoying her world. Looking at her, he could not react calmly. His heart began to beat wildly because she was incredibly beautiful, even at that moment when she was just sitting. Mom was riding on a swing, but when she noticed the teacher, she decided to stop and ask him about her daughter's progress. He was embarrassed but couldn't tell her the truth, so he said she was doing great. This made her very happy, and then she asked the teacher to push her on the swing. Then they began to have fun together, just like little children, although they knew almost nothing about each other. But suddenly he stopped very much, so she fell off the swing, so he quickly ran up to her and began to apologize. At the same time, Chanmi was watching them quietly, like a mouse from the balcony, who noticed this whole situation.